Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Khalid Masood Kareem. I will show you the top 20 weekly volume leaders of the Karachi Stock Exchange. The Cherat Cement closed at 80.49, which is below the weekly pivot level of 85.65. The weekly resistance and support levels are at 98.50 and 75.72. Sideways trend is expected during this week. The Engross fertilizer closed at 60.63, which is below the weekly pivot level of 61.45. The weekly resistance and support levels are at 63.70 and 58.55. The stock has lost its upside momentum, which is reflected by a black spinning candle. Sideways trend is expected during this week. The JSCL closed at 13.17, which is above the weekly pivot level of 11.63 with a significant wide margin. The weekly resistance and support levels are at 14.45 and 9.94. The stock is in strong bullish mode, which is reflected by a tall white candle. It may soon test the overhead resistance. Weekly close above 15.00 level will be a very bullish development. The Fauji Foods closed at 10.06, which is above the weekly pivot level of 9.85. The weekly resistance and support levels are at 11.82 and 8.68. The stock has completed its 5-weekly period of rest and may declare a new direction. The Amrali Steel closed at 35.08, which is below the weekly pivot level of 35.90. The weekly resistance and support levels are at 40.00 and 29.50. The stock is likely to continue its climb in a zigzag pattern. The Bank of Punjab closed at 9.07, which is above the weekly pivot level of 8.96. The weekly resistance and support levels are at 10.00 and 8.00. The stock is likely to continue its sideways behavior during current week. The PIBTL closed at 9.22, which is below the weekly pivot level of 9.34. The weekly resistance and support levels are at 10.49 and 8.53. The stock is likely to continue its sideways behavior during current week. The WorldCall Telecom closed at 0.78, which is below the weekly pivot level of 0.79. The weekly resistance and support levels are at 0.90 and 0.68. The stock is likely to continue its sideways behavior during current week. The Dera Ghazi Khan Cement closed at 79.35, which is below the weekly pivot level of 82.16. The weekly resistance and support levels are at 90.44 and 70.34. The stock is likely to continue its downside drive during the current week. The Pakistan Petroleum Limited closed at 89.90, which is below the weekly pivot level of 91.18. The weekly resistance and support are at 104.06 and 74.00 respectively. The stock is trading within an expanding pattern since last 5 weeks. It will remain sideways as long it stays within this pattern. The Hum Network Limited closed at 7.17, which is above the weekly pivot level of 6.02. The weekly resistance and support are at 7.22 and 4.82 respectively. The strong upside surge is likely to continue during this week. The OGDC closed at 103.05, which is below the weekly pivot level of 104.99. The weekly resistance and support are at 111.72 and 91.90 respectively. The stock is trading within an expanding pattern. It will remain sideways as long as it stays within this pattern. The K Electric closed at 2.83, which is below the weekly pivot level of 2.91. The weekly resistance and support are at 3.19 and 2.73 respectively. The stock is trading sideways below an old resistance zone. The Pioneer Cement closed at 59.09, which is below the weekly pivot level of 59.90. The weekly resistance and support are at 71.88 and 47.92 respectively. The stock is showing an inverted hammer right on the upper line of an expanding pattern. The indicators are also showing clues of tiredness. The FAG Cement closed at 16.81, which is above the weekly pivot level of 16.74. The weekly resistance and support are at 18.00 and 15.02 respectively. Sideways trading is expected. The PAC Electron closed at 22.50, which is below the weekly pivot level of 23.36. The weekly resistance and support are at 26.40 and 20.85 respectively. Sideways trading is expected. The TRG closed at 19.20, which is above the weekly pivot level of 18.44. The weekly resistance and support are at 20.45 and 15.44 respectively. More upside is expected during current week. The Maple Leaf Cement closed at 25.81, which is below the weekly pivot level of 26.66. The weekly resistance and support are at 28.79 and 22.16 respectively. Bulls of this stock should take care after the appearance of bear Harami candle. The Unity Foods closed at 12.79, which is above the weekly pivot level of 12.08. The weekly resistance and support are at 14.89 and 10.51 respectively. More upside gains are expected during current week. The Haskell closed at 14.89, which is below the weekly pivot level of 15.14. The weekly resistance and support are at 17.70 and 13.10 respectively. Sideways trading is expected during current week. The Karachi Stock Exchange 100 Index closed at 33,268, which is below the weekly pivot level of 33,697. The weekly resistance and support levels are at 35,399 and 30,667. The index is still contained within the bearish candle of third week of March 2020. Nervous accent will continue unless it closes above the high of this bearish candle. Hope you have enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe to my YouTube channel.